The answering machine picked up on the first ring. "This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you." For 6 seasons on NBC, from 1974 to 1980, that recorded voice was one of the most familiar sounds on American television. 30 million people tuned in each Friday night to watch a former convict turned private detective live out of a beat-up trailer on a Malibu beach parking lot and solve cases the police had already given up on. The Rockford Files ran 122 episodes, spawned 8 reunion TV movies, and won the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series in 1978. Today, of its core cast, only 2 faces remain. The rest have gone, some quietly, some suddenly, some carrying stories their viewers never suspected. This is where they all ended up. Number 1 is James Garner, and his story does not begin in Hollywood. It begins in Denver, Oklahoma, on April 7, 1928, where he was born James Scott Bumgarner, the youngest of 3 sons. His mother died when he was 4. His father, a carpet layer, remarried a woman the boys later described as abusive. Garner left home at 14, lived with his father in Los Angeles, dropped out of high school, and at 17 worked the oil fields of Oklahoma in summer and sold bathing suits in Hollywood in winter. He joined the United States Merchant Marine at 16 and the National Guard at 18. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, his Guard unit was among the first federalized and deployed overseas. He served 14 months in Korea and was wounded twice, the second time by friendly fire. That second Purple Heart took 32 years to arrive in the mail. He came home with it, an 8th grade education, and no particular plan. What he had was instinct. A producer named Paul Gregory found him in a non-speaking role in a 1954 stage production and convinced him to audition. By 1957, he was playing Brett Maverick on the ABC Western Maverick, the card sharp who preferred to avoid conflict if a clever bluff would do the same job. The character was a philosophical argument, the same one Garner would spend the next 50 years refining, that the wisest hero is the one who uses his head before his fists and runs if he can, because he knows what a fistfight actually costs. By 1960, Warner Bros. Had suspended him in a labor dispute. He sued them and won, one of the first actors to successfully break a studio contract. That victory remade the relationship between performers and studios in ways that are still felt today. The films that followed made him one of the most versatile leading men of his generation. The Great Escape, the Americanization of Emily, Grand Prix, Support Your Local Sheriff, Murphy's Romance, which earned him an Academy Award nomination. But The Rockford Files is what history will point to. He played Jim Rockford with an ease that concealed tremendous effort. The former convict who charged $200 a day and expenses rarely collected it and kept taking cases because he could not say no to someone who needed help and had nowhere else to turn. He was Emmy nominated 4 times for the role. He won in 1977. The show's physical toll was real. He was in almost every scene of nearly every episode, working days that began at dawn and ended long after dark. On arthritic knees, he hid from the camera for 6 years. He walked away from the show in 1979 because his body gave him no other choice. What most viewers never knew is that Garner was married to Lois Clark for 58 years, a marriage that produced 2 daughters, Kimberly and Greta, and survived periods of separation that Garner wrote about with unusual candor in his 2011 autobiography, The Garner Files. He called Clark the most important person in his life, and meant it without qualification. He underwent quintuple bypass surgery in 1988. He suffered a severe stroke in 2008. He kept working anyway, appearing in The Notebook in 2004 opposite Gina Rowlands, and continuing to take television roles into his late 70s. James Garner died at his home in Brentwood, California, on July 19, 2014. He was 86. His death certificate listed the cause as acute myocardial infarction. His daughter Greta told reporters simply that he had died of a heart attack at home. He had been spending time with family in the days before. He is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills. A 10-foot bronze statue of him as Brett Maverick stands in Norman, Oklahoma, 9 miles from the town where he was born. Jim Rockford rarely got paid, never got thanked, and kept answering the phone anyway. James Garner won 2 Purple Hearts, broke a studio contract that remade the industry, and spent 50 years making decency look like the easiest thing in the world. Number 2 is Noah Beery Jr., who played Joseph "Rocky" Rockford, Jim's retired truck driver father, the conscience and the comic relief of the whole enterprise, and who had been performing professionally since 1920 when he appeared in The Mark of Zorro alongside his own father at age 7. He was born Noah Lindsay Beery on August 10, 1913, in New York City, the son of character actor Noah Beery Sr. and the nephew of Wallace Beery, who would become the highest-paid actor in America by 1932. His family was Hollywood royalty from the first generation of the industry. He attended Harvard Military Academy, made B-westerns through the 1930s and 1940s, and built a 50-year career as one of the most reliably warm character actors in the business. He played Montgomery Clift's pal Buster in Red River in 1948. He played alongside John Wayne in half a dozen pictures. He appeared in Of Mice and Men, Only Angels Have Wings, and Walking Tall. What he brought to every role was something that could not be manufactured, a genuine, unhurried human decency that the camera registered without effort. Rocky Rockford was the warmest version of that quality, the father who never quite understood what his son did for a living, but showed up for every case anyway, cooking dinner in a trailer and worrying in a way that made it clear worrying was how he expressed love. What most viewers never knew is that Beery Jr. first married Maxine Jones, the daughter of Western film star Buck Jones, in 1940, a marriage that produced 3 children and lasted until 1966. His second wife, Lisa Thorman, was with him from 1968 until the very end. A stroke in the mid-1980s forced him into retirement at 72. He spent his final years at a ranch in Tehachapi, California, 80 miles north of Los Angeles, where he had owned property since the early 1950s. Noah Beery Jr. died of cerebral thrombosis on November 1, 1994, at his ranch in Tehachapi. He was 81. His wife Lisa was at his side. He is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, beside his father and mother. 3 generations of Beerys in the same cemetery in the hills above the city where they all built their careers. Rocky Rockford drove a truck and cooked eggs and prayed his son would come home safe. Noah Beery Jr. had been in front of a camera for 65 years by the time he died and never once made it look like work. But the most quietly devastating story from the Rockford Files set belongs to the man who made Jim Rockford laugh more than anyone else on the call sheet, and who turned out to be the most complicated figure in the entire cast. Number 3 is Stuart Margolin, who played Evelyn Angel Martin, Jim Rockford's former cellmate from San Quentin, the small-time con man who called in more favors than he ever repaid, who got Rockford into trouble in nearly every episode and never once apologized for it, and who was so thoroughly lovable that the audience forgave him every time. Margolin won back-to-back Emmy Awards for the role. In 1979 and 1980, he is one of only a handful of performers in television history to win the same Emmy for the same role in consecutive years. He was born Stuart Margolin on January 31, 1940, in Davenport, Iowa. He began his career as an actor and songwriter in the 1960s, appearing in small television roles before landing Angel, a character written as a perpetual liability who somehow became the show's most beloved recurring figure. What Margolin did with Angel was technically precise. The wheedling, the fast-talking, the way Angel's eyes moved when he was calculating an exit. He played a man who never told the whole truth and made you want to hear more of his lies. Away from the show, Margolin built an equally significant career as a television director, helming episodes of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Touched by an Angel, and The Rockford Files itself. He directed several of the 1990s Rockford reunion movies. He was also a working songwriter, and one of his songs, a gentle, melancholy piece called And I Love Her So, was recorded by Perry Como and became a top 10 hit in 1973. The con man's creator was also a poet. What most viewers never knew is that Margolin left Hollywood in his later years and settled in Staunton, Virginia, a small city in the Shenandoah Valley, where he lived quietly with his family, far from the industry that had given him 2 Emmys and never quite known what to do with him after. His stepson is actor Max Martini, who confirmed the death on social media. Stuart Margolin died of natural causes in Staunton, Virginia, on December 12, 2022. He was 82. The cause was not specified beyond natural causes. Angel Martin spent every episode looking for an angle. Stuart Margolin spent his final years in a Virginia valley, writing songs and waiting for no one. If you are still watching and these stories mean something to you, please subscribe. Every death in this script was verified and every detail was sourced. These videos take weeks of research and your subscription makes the next one possible. Number 4 is Joe Santos, who played Sergeant Dennis Becker, later Lieutenant, the LAPD officer who was Jim Rockford's best friend, his most useful connection, and his greatest source of professional embarrassment. Becker covered for Rockford when he shouldn't have, protected him when he couldn't, and spent 6 seasons being looked down upon by his superiors for maintaining a friendship the department disapproved of. He kept doing it anyway. The character was a study in loyalty, expressed as exasperation, and Santos played that balance with a precision that earned him an Emmy nomination in 1979. He was born Joseph John Minieri Jr. on June 9, 1931, in Brooklyn, New York. His father died on the same day he was born. His mother, Rose, sold olive oil and eventually became a nightclub owner and singer. He grew up in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, where his relatives were longshoremen and where he absorbed the working-class diction and the particular physical authority that defined every character he would ever play. He served in the United States military and then turned to acting, working bit parts through the 1960s before the Rockford Files gave him the role that made his name. After the show, he appeared in a 7-episode arc on The Sopranos in 2004, playing consigliere Angelo Gareppe, a role that introduced him to a new generation of viewers who had no idea he had been doing this for 40 years. He reprised Dennis Becker in all 8 of the Rockford reunion TV movies between 1994 and 1999. He and James Garner had a friendship that lasted until Garner's death in 2014. What Garner wrote about Santos in his autobiography captures it precisely. He's angry and desperate, just like I am. That's why Rockford worked so well. Santos's wife, Maria Montero, a Cuban woman he had married in 1958, died in 1988 after 30 years of marriage. He is survived by 3 children, Perry, Joe Jr., and Lily. Joe Santos died on March 18, 2016, at a hospital in Santa Monica, California, 4 days after suffering a heart attack at his Los Angeles home. He was 84. His burial location has not been publicly documented. Dennis Becker spent 6 seasons being professionally punished for his loyalty to Jim Rockford. Joe Santos spent 40 years building a career that the industry acknowledged too quietly and too late. Number 5 is James Luisi, who played Lieutenant Doug Chapman, the humorless, contemptuous LAPD superior, who appeared in seasons 3 through 6 as the man most determined to make Jim Rockford's life impossible. Chapman was not a villain exactly, just a bureaucrat who had organized his entire professional identity around the rules Rockford kept breaking. Luisi played him with a rigid, coiled fury that made every scene he appeared in feel like a pressure cooker about to go. He was born James Anthony Luisi on November 2nd, 1928, in East Harlem, New York City. Before he ever stood in front of a camera, he attended St. Francis College on a basketball scholarship, was drafted by the Boston Celtics in the 6th round of the 1951 NBA draft, and played 31 games with the Baltimore Bullets in the 1953-54 season, averaging 3 points a game. Then he served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and appeared on Broadway in the original 1966 production of Sweet Charity, directed by Bob Fosse. The man best remembered for playing a hostile LAPD lieutenant once danced for Bob Fosse on a Broadway stage. What most viewers never knew is that in 1976, the same year he began playing Chapman on The Rockford Files, Luisi won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Actor in a Daytime Drama Special for his portrayal of George Washington in First Lady's Diaries, Martha Washington. He played the most hostile cop on one of the most popular primetime dramas on NBC, and an Emmy-winning George Washington in the same year. He later appeared in Norma Ray with Sally Field in 1979, in Bob Fosse's final film Star 80 in 1983, and returned to play Chapman in the Rockford reunion TV movies in 1996. James Luisi died of cancer in Los Angeles on June 7, 2002. He was 73. He was survived by his wife Georgia Phillips, whom he had married in 1961, and their daughter Jamie. He had been married to Georgia for 41 years. Lieutenant Chapman would have disapproved of Rockford's methods until his last breath. James Luisi danced for Bob Fosse and played George Washington, and nobody remembered to put that on the poster. Number 6 is Gretchen Corbett, who played Beth Davenport, Jim Rockford's attorney, his confidant, and the closest thing the show gave him to a real personal relationship. She appeared in 33 episodes across the first 4 seasons, and the warmth she brought to Beth made her absence in the final 2 seasons one of the quiet losses that settled over the show without anyone quite addressing it. She was competent, clear-eyed, and loyal in exactly the way the show's other characters rarely managed. She was born in Portland, Oregon in 1947 into the Corbett family, one of the most distinguished Oregon pioneer families in the state's history. She studied theater, came to New York, and built a stage career alongside her television work. After the Rockford Files, she returned primarily to theater, serving as artistic director of the Haven Project, a theater program for underserved communities in Portland, and directing regional productions including One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, in which she played Nurse Ratched. The woman who played Rockford's loyal attorney spent her post-Hollywood years running a theater that served people who could not afford tickets. Gretchen Corbett is alive in 2026. She continues to work in regional theater in the Pacific Northwest. She appeared in the Hulu series Shrill and played 3 different characters in Portlandia. Beth Davenport was the most grounded person in Jim Rockford's orbit. Gretchen Corbett, it turns out, was building something real while Hollywood forgot she existed. Number 7 is Tom Atkins, who played Lieutenant Alex Deal during the show's first 2 seasons, the bristling, skeptical LAPD officer who treated every interaction with Rockford as a professional insult. He played the role with the barely contained irritation of a man who had spent his entire career doing everything by the book and resented being made to look slow by a trailer-dwelling ex-convict. He was born on November 13, 1935 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. After the Rockford Files, he carved out an entirely different second career in genre film, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in 1980s horror and science fiction: Escape from New York, The Fog, Creepshow, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Night of the Creeps, Maniac Cop. He played tough, weathered authority figures in films that scared a generation of moviegoers. The hostile cop from a primetime detective show became a cult hero in a completely different genre. Tom Atkins is alive in 2026. He is 90 years old and still making occasional film appearances. Lieutenant Deal looked at Jim Rockford like he was a problem that needed solving. Tom Atkins spent the next 4 decades being the most interesting person in every horror film he walked into. Number 8 belongs to the face from the Rockford Files parking lot that went furthest. Tom Selleck appeared in 2 episodes of the Rockford Files as Lance White, a rival investigator who was everything Jim Rockford was not: wealthy, successful, respected, and irritatingly pleasant. The 2 episodes aired in 1978 and 1979, when Selleck was a working actor with a recognizable face and no particular star to call his own. James Garner was his friend and advocate on the set, and what most people never knew is that Selleck was a regular character in the story of what happened to Garner's knees, because the 2 of them played tennis together between seasons throughout the show's run. He was born on January 29, 1945 in Detroit, Michigan. The year after his Rockford appearances, he was cast as Thomas Magnum in Magnum P.I., a role he played for 8 seasons and which made him one of the most famous faces on American television. He is alive in 2026 at 81, still playing Frank Reagan on Blue Bloods after 13 seasons, still working in a way that would have been inconceivable to the guest actor who spent 2 episodes annoying Jim Rockford with his uncomplicated success. The answering machine at Rockford's trailer recorded every message and saved none of them. The show itself saved all of it: the cases, the schemes, the friendships, the 1,000 ways a decent man navigates an indecent world. James Garner is in the Hollywood Hills. Noah Beery Jr. is beside his father and grandfather in the same cemetery. Stuart Margolin is in a Virginia valley where no one called him Angel. Joe Santos's resting place is private and known only to his children. James Luisi, who won an Emmy as George Washington and danced for Bob Fosse, is in Los Angeles, forgotten by most, and two of them are still here. Gretchen Corbett in the Pacific Northwest, still running theater for people who need it. Tom Atkins at 90, still walking into horror films like he owns the place. The trailer is gone. The beach parking lot in Malibu was redeveloped decades ago, but the machine still picks up, and the voice is still there. And 52 years later, the message is still the same. Leave your name and number. I'll get back to you. If these stories mattered to you, leave a comment below. Tell me which one hit hardest. I read every reply.